doesn't know how to watch esports, want to introduce yourselves and your background in esports?
Sure. So my name is Daniel. I was 13 years, so it kind of sticks. Rubor, and I went through StarCraft 2 creation and done a lot of shoutcasting. So yeah, that's about it.
I'm a SMITE caster in the tournament and got my butt kicked and had to give casting. And I've been to, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, when I was young, I grew up RIP. So, but yeah, ever since the fighting games came into consoles, and then people started to gather up community events, and now there's like a world championship happening at Las Vegas, and it's become a bigger scale. And I've been doing I'm still playing the game professionally, and as well as doing commentary, doing broadcasting, all sorts of assistance that's needed for tournaments at the moment.
Hi everyone, my name is Stacia Grooby. My background is quite sorted, so I did do some commentary in my early days for Dota 2 and Counter-Strike. I was not a very good player, certainly not pro. I've then moved into the industry in developing esports products, so I developed Throwdown Esports with Showdown, the next gamer with Marquee Studios, and I am now the social media and community manager for Gfinity, which is a UK esports league that is coming to Australia very soon.
Awesome. Okay, so the way this panel came up is the Overwatch World Cup was recently in Sydney about 3 months ago, and I went along because I love Overwatch. I play a lot of Overwatch, and I got there and I was like, oh man, I'm definitely going to know what's happening. And I sat down and people were screaming and cheering, and I was like, nothing's happening. People are walking around the map, and no one's shot at anything yet, and I don't know what's happening. So I want to start from what I think is probably the most easily picked up esport to spectate, which is fighting games. So I guess, Kevin, is there like a what am I, for me, if I'm playing Street Fighter Tekken and stuff, how easy is it for me to then jump into spectating that?
I mean, everybody kind of knows what Street Fighter is, what Tekken is, right? Like, even if you haven't played it, you would like know its characters, and since the franchise has been over 25 years now, if you're a gamer, you would have heard those franchises. Essentially, in a traditional fighting game, it's a 1 versus 1 game, like in person as well, and as well as in the game. You choose one character, and then you try to beat up the opponent. And to determine the winner, it's a visual indicator of life bar at the top of the screen, usually on the top of the screen. Some games I know that they have it different places, but yeah, and also visually, there's nothing off screen or off, the two players are both in one screen at all times. Maybe if they go far apart from each other, maybe the screen may zoom out and stuff like that, some special effects. But just with the human eye, it's really easy to see who's getting beat up, because you will see physical punches and kicks, as if you're watching an action film or something like that. Yeah, and then essentially if one player or one character has their health depleted to 0, that person is determined the loser, and the one remaining with the health remaining would be the winner of that.
I guess fighting games, it's very easy for me, not knowing much about them, to spectate, because I'm sure a lot of you have seen the video, The Beast Unleashed, of that insane counter of it's Chun-Li and Ken, right?
Yes, so the character Chun-Li and Ken, it's played by, even currently the best two players in the world is Daigo Umehara from Japan and Justin Won from USA. Yes, that's the "Let's go Justin" is the famous quote for that. And yes, and they still play the game to this day. They're over 30 years old now, but fighting games is I guess one of the games where you can still play as you grow old professionally. It's very open as well. Yeah, and it's just because Daigo at the moment used the specific mechanic, which is called the parry. I don't want to get into too much details, but it's essentially something that you will have to react to within. So the game is basically run at 60 frames per second. The successful parry can be recognized by the game if performed within 3 to 5 frames. So that's a fraction of a second, right? So he did perform that, and that was 11 or 12 times consecutively. So in that amount of reaction time, I know in most esports games, reaction is very important. In fighting games, something like that can happen in a tournament environment, and yes, the crowd goes wild. Even if you're not a fighting game fan, you would see how well he has performed in order to do that comeback.
I guess that's something that, yeah, it's displayed in the game itself, because that's also visually very impressive, that bit of like all those counters and stuff. And then on something like an RTS, Dan, spectating something like that, going from, say, playing StarCraft, then spectating it, is there quite a difference in what you're looking at?
Well, there is, because in a game of StarCraft, generally when you play it, it's a game of limited information. And that's what makes it so cool, is because you have to make so many decisions without knowing anything about what your opponent's doing, especially at the start of the game. And then it's about getting vision, and based on what you can see your opponent doing, you can react to that. Or you can think a few steps down the line, or even a few minutes down the line, and try and come up with a strategy to basically counter what your opponent's doing. But then your opponent's doing exactly the same thing to you, so it's like you're trying to counter what they're doing. They might be thinking that you might counter that, and then it just gets into this absolute mess. And that's why it becomes so exciting. So, I mean, taking it from playing the game with limited information, then you watch it, and you've got all the information on both sides. But it's not always obvious to the viewer why the players do what they do, and then you have to have quite a lot of knowledge about not only how the game works, but how the players work, because styles are very prevalent throughout the game. Like, one player might be amazing at producing a huge army, another player is really good at just that little micromanagement. And so from spectating it, you're looking for how are they using their economy, how are they using their units, are they a player that likes to build up a huge army, or do they just like playing really scrappy? And it's, I suppose, the diversity of styles that I think draws a lot of people to the game and to the viewing experience, and the different matchups as well play a big part of that. Watching Zerg versus Zerg is very different to watching a Zerg versus a Protoss. It's almost a completely different game.
Cool. So let's move along to MOBAs now. MOBAs is something that I still, to this day, just don't understand. I can sit down and watch a StarCraft game and pretty much figure it out. It's two armies trying to annihilate each other. But MOBAs, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, so MOBAs, I think one of the biggest kind of hurdles to understanding MOBA is that, unlike a lot of other esports titles, there's no kind of real-world equivalent. You know, like we said before, you know, like fighting games, it's like an action movie. You know, FPSs, it's like, again, like an action movie, I suppose. And even titles like Rocket League and FIFA, you know, just like soccer. But with MOBAs, it's almost completely foreign style of play. You know, nowhere in the real world are you going to see MOBAs is my parents, and you know, I'll show them clips of me commentating, or occasionally they'll come along to events, and they're like, oh, you know, you sound real good, honey, it's really nice, but we have no idea what's going on. I'm like, well, yeah. And so I think that's definitely one inherent challenge MOBAs face, but you know, what it takes to kind of really enjoy a MOBA as an esport is not only, you know, playing the game, but having some deeper understanding of it. But what you find then, though, is that
Move your team, how to hear the communication between join and over time. You commentators are the key that's going on. They give you the justification to why you're certainly here in the audience. And I know people hate audience engagement esports already. So for a lot of people, we're an esports title that you don't play. I think like that's kind of the strategy. You know the characters, you get the moves, you want to sit down and get as hyped as we. There's nothing like it. So I started screaming black hole with my family, and they were just like, and I'm like, yeah, no, this is amazing. It's really... I think that's sort of engaged the audience across multiple.
Again, my only contact I've ever seen, and I had such a great time, and then it went just streamed online for someone who was picking it up. But then as soon as that mainstream, the meta and stuff like that, and but not knowing how it esports needs to start doing is maybe just.
I think having two avenues, Dota 2 International is probably the game. So if you know stream, the newbie stream is, you know, they get that people don't understand it. Like, this is a minion, it goes down the out. You know, so it's like really step by step. We'll watch the newbie stream as well, because it's like, apply to all esports titles. We need to start involve everyone. Then it needs to be entertaining to people. It needs to stop being good at esports, and they probably never will be. What is a sport without fans, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's something like sports.
Yeah, esports, and I think you make a great point about the elite players. The elite can't stand the commentary. And it's so much that they don't actually know. I've been thinking about this for years, especially coming from when we watch this, or why do we perspective to understand what would draw theory, and it really goes back to very good, very talented AFL, or whether we're playing a bit of game. The reason we watch is we don't know what's going to happen, but it's within a confined rule. So a video game can be, you could look at a game, learn the rules for the game. If there's no way for the newcomer to come along, and they're not going to enjoy the broadcast.
The matter, because I've heard anecdotes of people who go completely.
Well, I think we should actually start by defining. So if it sounds a little bit poncy, but because you've got the StarCraft match, you're watching two StarCraft that have ever been played of hours and thousands of games, and it's the same. And so understanding what the other player has, and that's really to understand how someone might play.
Right on.
I mean, that's like visually it's all exciting, and you can martial artists, the wrestlers, the pace of the game, how naturally it's designed to you just gotta survive, and minute and a half. But in a tournament setting, it's so every if you like essentially you have to win 2 of them. Like tournament 4 in between 3 to 5 minutes. Information to the audience. The fighting game commentators right now, right? So a strings of attack game or Street Fighter would be like you jump like down, hit another button. That's with your joystick, and 3 buttons that the player is pressing. To say that, say, and then he lands. Yeah. By the time something, so it's realistic. There are ways. If it's something very old, I guess the commentator mechanics and trying to deliver that. Continuously developing kind of
the traditional sports in some sense. I mean, you've got a very key action moment, and then you have more fast-paced games. Take the whole game just to get 1 goal, instant action. But then you take a mobile, it can be a little boring, But that's this is what they get a chance to explain. The people that are playing games, FPS games like that, you action.
Yeah, I guess like per se, like right, think about it. While the clock is still ticking, you can't. General tournament rules. Yes, you can have a little bit of there's a little bit of a gap time there with a minute or 2, right? So fighting games, that's when the commentators can actually. They did that certain combo. Difference there.
To build story esports is building those personalities and teams, because SK Telecom and things like that, and that's because it's personalities and give a good chance at meta and strategy about soccer ball around, or bring up player personalities and people like, I really like this guy. You can go from there and
you say, we've all hit a tennis when it comes to esports.
I even come to a super high level of knowledge. Same with Rocket League. I've played only a few matches of that. I still watch Super Smash to MOBAs. I'm understanding, but an RTS like StarCraft, I have RTSs and MOBAs face that.
You agree with that, Dan?
Yeah, definitely. Getting people into watching it. I think it's been one example I can think about. I can't remember the name of the guy. Commentator for so angry. And it was like, well, esports on television, because means how to watch the game. If you want to start watching RTS, I'd say the best thing to do would be fire up the game, do the tutorial. At least get an understanding about how the economy works and how moving units around works. And once you've got that, I'd say there's really 3 things to look out for when you're watching any sort of esport. And this doesn't just apply for RTS, so like any esport. if you want to look for when the crowd is going to be going wild, I think there's three key things. One is be looking for that moment where it's going to come to a head and it's either going to go very well or very poorly. The second thing would be look for instances of just amazing mechanical skill, because like across these games, you've got players that can operate up to 400 or 500 actions per minute. That's definitely true of StarCraft, but I know it's also true of particularly fighting games. I think they play up to like 200 or 300 actions per minute, to me at least. And then the other thing would be game-changing actions, like a huge team fight, or in RTS, just the huge battles with the for those things, and just try and ask yourself, you know, when you're looking at it and you are entertained by it, just ask yourself why, and then ask yourself, why was that cool? And if you start asking those questions, then you're going to start intuitively understanding the rules of the game or the esport, and then you'll be able to apply that next time. And it's just about kind of growing an encyclopedia of knowledge about the game and about the sport into your mind.
Alex?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the playing the tutorial, particularly with MOBAs, since the majority of them are free-to-play games. There's no cost to you to do that other than your time. And if you wanted to get involved in watching the esport, you're going to be investing time anyway. But one of the best things I found for getting into MOBAs, and this is how I got into SMITE actually, is to watch like someone that's not actually necessarily part of the community of that MOBA or a top level player, watch a YouTube video of them playing. Now I actually got into SMITE via watching the Rooster Teeth guys play some SMITE on their Let's Play channels. And that got me really interested in the game, first of all for the mythological aspect of it, but then also watching people who don't know how to play the game learn to play the game essentially for me, and they learn the basics and things like that there. That was really helpful to me because they weren't using overly technical terms like someone that a pro player might. Like if a pro player is there making a tutorial video, they might, you know, might just be a couple of inadvertent slips, but they might use some really advanced terminology or just assume a base level of knowledge for their viewers. But someone that's not inherently part of that game, or someone that's new to the game and that you're watching them play for the first time, that I find they're kind of making the mistakes for you, and you know, buying wrong items or playing wrong characters in wrong positions and things like that, or you know, they're calling things funny names like you would because they don't understand what it does. And then watching them through those struggles, and then to, you know, even if they don't become, you know, godlike players by the end of their video, at least they get some kind of understanding. That gives you kind of an idea when you are watching the game, or even if you go in for your first game, of this is, you know, I can't understand what to do because I watched so-and-so play it on YouTube, and they were very, very basic about it, so I know what this thing is. I might not call it the correct term, but I know at least what I know it as. So I found that for me personally, getting into SMITE, that was something that was very, very helpful.
Kevin, for fighting games, want to watch some Tekken? What am I going to do?
I mean, if, like I said, if arcades were still around, I would just say, oh, go to your local arcades with some coins, and that's it really. But yeah, once again, rip arcades. Yeah, we're pretty much living in an era where we're seeing a phase of the whole fighting game culture is like phasing away from the arcades now into home consoles, and now some people are even saying the future is online. Well, every one of them are acceptable. Like, you know, some people still proudly rock their arcade cabinets and then bring them to their local events and such. They, you know, bring a big trolley and all that. But right now, I guess the best way to see it is like, you know, I don't want to cut it short, but like, you know, YouTube, Twitch, like so many informations nowadays. I guess something special about fighting games is that there are still new strategies that like people are discovering for Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which is a game that's, what, 25 years old now. People to this day play that game competitively, and to this day they would upload YouTube videos if they found something amazing in a competitive aspect. So like fighter games essentially don't really have a lifespan. They go eternally because, like I said, even for those traditional games, they play to this day like professionally for prize money and pride and all that. So A lot of people, whether it's a popular personality like a content creator or like, you know, individual players, just everyday players, when they find something that is seemingly cool to see and also have the ability to explain it either in text or like voiceover, they would upload it into, you know, YouTube, and then people either copy it and, you know, try to utilize their own strategy on top of it. It gets really creative. So like, I guess fighting games also, it can be kind of called as a, it's a pseudo sandbox game because it allows that creativity, although you are still playing within the rules of how the mechanics are set. And yeah, I mean, currently there's a league called Capcom Pro Tour that's actively happening. That's, you know, going around globally. And also when you mentioned ESPN Street Fighter at Las Vegas, the Evolution Championship also was, you know, aired on ESPN as well, which was pretty amazing. It's becoming very big, and yeah, it's just commentators also have their personality, and some people even chase after matches, not for their favorite players, but for their favorite commentators as well. Because some commentators, while they might not use a lot of terminology, which might bore the casual audience, they will use, like, you know, street terms. You know, they can analyze into fighting games and such. So personalities like that always help. You know, you to watch fighting games that if you've never seen a fighting game before. With a lot of excitement and hype. And one thing different about also fighting games is because it's an open tournament. So to give you an example, I guess people have this misconception that you got to be pro and sponsored to become a esports player, right? Which is true to an extent. But for fighting games, it has been traditionally an open tournament with a double elimination format. So last year in Evolution, there were over 5,000 Street Fighter V entrants all around the world in that single hotel venue. And they had to reduce down that number to just top 8 players in a single day. So you can see the amount of setups that were required to, you know, reduce down and eliminate all these players and just, you know, come down to the top 8 players. And there's no like restrictions on what controller you can use. You can use your control pad, you can use your arcade sticks. Some people even modify their keyboards. Also, the so-called keyboard warriors are now coming offline to play offline players. So there's no restriction on controllers, there's no restriction on age, gender. Disability is also not a thing. So there's a player named Broly Legs, that's his gamer tag. He's, in terms of his diagnosis, but it's a bit difficult to explain, but okay. But for the movement, he uses his, so he had to, allows you to set like a shortcut button, press 3 kicks at the same time and such. And, you know, he hands, which is for what fighting game allows, obsolete, because, like I said, you like the game, you're passionate, everyone can enter and stuff, like, it's really.
Where would I go to start
Yeah.
watching that kind of stuff?
Well, I want to touch on is people when they get into a new game, or even the game that you do currently play, find the people that are the best in the world. You know, find out where they stream or they make videos or their Twitter accounts or their Facebooks, like watch what they're doing, reach out to them. Esports is much like any gaming community. You know, we started very small and we're building up really big. And so a lot of these players still have very personal relations with their fans, you know, their community members. So, you know, ask them for help. Ask them where did they learn? You know, did they go to forums, a Discord channel, you know, a website? Maybe they have a favorite YouTube person that they like to watch and they learned off them. So, you know, find the resources available to you. You know, similar to traditional sports, you know, there's clubs, you know, for amateurs, you know, they play on Sundays. You can do the same with esports. There's community groups that run casual tournaments, that do broadcasting, things like that you can reach out to. You know, if you don't own the game, but you still want to watch it and you still want to enjoy it, that's probably the best way to get into it. I don't think you have to play a game to love esports. You just need to understand the hype and the excitement. If you're introducing people for the first time, take them to a live event. Don't introduce them to a broadcast because they probably won't understand. Wait for something like PAX. You know, wait for something like IEM. Wait for, you know, your local tournament to be doing a LAN event and take them to that, because then they see the passion and they hear the audience, and like, it doesn't matter what game it is, you can't escape that like feeling of love and like excitement and passion. You know, you get caught up into it and then you want to learn more. So that's a great way to introduce people. Game review companies, every company is going to cover a new esports title. It's, you know, it's what they do. So look at game reviews, because most game review people aren't gamers, you know, in the sense that they want to become pro players. They're reviewing hundreds of games, you know, a year, so they only get time to play it once or twice, and they've got to review it. So they actually have some of the best perspectives of like, what is this game like? How hard was it to play? I didn't understand a thing, but I really enjoyed it. Something blew up. It was exciting. You know, that's what you want to read and get kind of addicted to. And then obviously the one if you do buy the game and you do play it, do the tutorials like they said. You know, in Counter-Strike there are community servers, different game modes. So you don't have to play a competitive game mode. You can play something fun like Arms Race or Deathmatch or something like that. If they have those modes available in the game that you're playing, enjoy the community modes first, because they will teach you the characters, they'll teach you the mechanics, they'll teach you the gameplay, and they'll introduce you to people in the community. And then once you've made friends and you've started to establish that, that's when you start going, hey guys, you want to make a team? Let's make a team. Let's enter that Sunday tournament. Like, we might win $50. Let's give it a shot. That's sort of the like how it starts, and that's how it progresses. And I think, you know, as you get more immersed into the community as it exists, they start educating you when it comes to broadcasts. And then sort of, I guess, moving on to, we were talking about esports on TV and like linear broadcast and more traditional media. I think that comes down to the publishers, the league operators, the people that are broadcasting. It's up to them to educate you at that stage. Like, no one wants something forced down their throat. And I think we feel that way about traditional sports quite often. Like, you know, when you had the McGregor fight, it was everywhere. And if you weren't into fighting, you were like, why would I want to watch this? Like, why is this so hype? But it was always there. But they did a backstory. They were like, this is why the rivalry is so intense. You know, it's going to be the biggest match ever. Millions of dollars. Oh my God. And you were like, oh yeah, I like millions of dollars. What's going on? So you started like kind of getting into it. So like, I think it's up to the publishers and the broadcasters to be like, this is why you want to watch this match. This is why you want to watch this person. Like, this could be you. Like, this could be you. And it's true. It could be you. I mean, esports players are like, they start at like 14, anywhere up to in their 30s, and some of them have only played for like 6 months to a year, and suddenly they're on a stage somewhere. It's like, it legitimately could be you. So I think content creators, influencers, commentators, publishers, league operators, it's one big network where we all have to work together. And just participate. Just participate. I mean, for Gfinity in UK, which is where our company started, we have a 3-stage approach. So we have a community league. You just play online. You don't have to compete at a serious level if you don't want to. If you want to give it a shot, you compete at a serious level. We create drafts where pro teams can pick up community members as part of their organization and give them a chance to show what they can do. And I think in Australia, obviously we'll be bringing that to Australia, but I think existing community groups here are doing very similar things. You know, they've got their Sunday leagues, they've got their come home from work, jump on for an hour, have a go. So yeah, all I can say is if you're interested in a game and you want to learn about it, research. Just find all the resources, every Twitter person, every Facebook group. Get in and start talking to people, don't be shy. Because esports is definitely not for the shy.
to add on to that as well, because you made some really good points. It's like, I mean, we could spend an hour just unpacking that. Yeah. But if you're brand new to esports and you've never really watched something before and you'd like to get involved, just like load up a broadcast and you could get into it just as simply as pick a player or pick a team or find out who's representing your country overseas and just watch it and cheer for them. And you don't actually have to understand the rules to be really excited about seeing your player win. And then you share that experience with other fans and whatnot of that player or of that team, or you've got that camaraderie. And I think that's a really critical area that traditional sports have tapped into very well. It's like, I mean, the AFL, you watch footy like now and again, or you might have a team, and it's actually more so that people are excited to go and watch their team, and they could care less about watching these other two teams play. They're only just going to be there watching their team. So it's like, pick a player or pick a team and go and watch that and be excited for your player's performance.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to some questions. So we've got microphones over here and over here. So if you guys want to start lining up if you have any questions. But before we get to that, recommend me some, you guys' best recommendations for where I should start watching, like some YouTubers, Twitch streamers, anything like that.
Well, I could start. Right now, BlizzCon, like the Blizzard convention is going to be happening over the next week, and the StarCraft finals are going to be held there. I mean, I think that started this morning at about 2 in the morning. So you can either watch the VODs or you can get involved with that tournament, pick a player and cheer for them. They've got the best of the best commentators that'll be able to introduce you to that game if you're interested. Yeah.
For SMITE, 6 p.m. tonight here at PAX, the ESL stage, we have the SMITE Oceanic Regional Finals. The winner of that will be going to the World Championship in Atlanta in early January. I'll be commentating on that. So that's a great point to get started for SMITE. And then, you know, the winner of that, like Dan was saying, you can follow that team to HughZ Expo and the SMITE World Championship and cheer them on there as your representative for the Oceanic region. For other resources, HughZ TV is the official kind of channel for all HughZ related games, particularly SMITE. If you look up League of Legends on Twitter or LOL Esports, they're often posting about different streams that are going on and about their matches. The World Championship's going on right now as well. So later on tonight, after you've watched the SMITE finals, you can tune into that on Twitch. And yeah, those are really kind of the best places to start. But yeah, 6 p.m. tonight, guys.
For Street Fighter, if you guys want to physically experience it, the guys here in PAX Australia, it's happening actually right now at the Throwdown Esports stage in the event hall. I think they're going to do it throughout the whole day today. I think Australia's best players currently bowing out to win a ticket to Red Bull Kumite, which is an event happening in Paris, France. So the winner will get flown there and then get a chance to fight against the world's best. So if you want to see that action physically, you can see that at the Throwdown Esports stage. If you want to find online content, like I said before, Capcom Pro Tour is the official Street Fighter league happening globally. And when I mention globally, literally it's happening like North America, Asia, Middle East, Europe, even Australia. We had 2 events before earlier in the year. Since it is a global event, technically and usually there's like a Capcom Pro Tour event at least 3 times a month. It could be all different places. Sometimes there's like non-stop, you know, action of usually for every single match is like 3 to 5 minutes. So you'll get a Twitter. They usually upload all the
Overwatch publisher, so Blizzard for places that you can watch it. Runs a significant number of FPS. There's a lot to watch here at PAX. A lot of the booths are running current pros in the scene. Just head onto Twitch or YouTube. Just casually playing, you'll find some of the most epic, I guess, looking into it and fun.
About 7 minutes, so let's try and get through these because I want to get through them all. Let's go over here.
Introducing my wife into experience back in the 90s, Quake World, Team Fortress. A couple of bouts between each other, even before we knew each other. Sydney, well, it was amazing, great. Live broadcast a little bit about Overwatch. She doesn't play it herself. There's some really intricate things around the meta to do so. I try and get, we laugh at Muselk and things like that, but I can't take her with me to go trade. I'm like, I'll take care of the kids, you go, and she's like, very keen. So I was wondering, apart from I know that Blizzard just recently in the last 24 hours here for her to just pop in and have to get your friends and family, any recommendations are much
I guess esports minded highlight videos. So if someone's made a frag movie or they help give them that, you know, I don't have and in Dota, I know Valve did a and they went through, you know, you saw players crying. It worked really well for them in getting. You start with highlight clips, see if that works. Like you've already, I find the other these characters. I mean, you've got the comics, of the characters. They've sort of integrated a little bit of this is Reinhardt. You know, he's a soft heart, and you create the story. Understand why, you know, go on her, yes, sleep that person. What she does, so you can get behind it. People will naturally find their own way of like something. So yeah,
I think that's pretty solid, man. Over here.
Mainstream. For example, tonight you have, my question will be, who should be taking that next step or who should be leading the charge in moving esports into mainstream, such as bars, clubs, or community centres, or streaming parties?
Do you mean in terms of which esport or which?
Just in general esports, should the developers or the community itself be leading the charge to get the esports shown in these types of venues?
I think developers, particularly with MOBAs, they're very developer driven. With Overwatch, it's now very developer driven, and we see with the Overwatch World League partnering with both traditional esports clubs and also traditional sports franchises, that's moving a lot into the mainstream, because you're seeing organizations like football and basketball teams investing heavily into esports organizations and teams. So I think it definitely needs to be firstly publisher driven, and then I think secondly we're seeing a lot of very currently popular brands and sports franchises start to invest in the esports sphere, and I think that's going to be one of the major pushes that brings it into the mainstream. For example, last year the SMITE World Championship, very similar to with the LoL World Championship right now, it was shown in theaters sponsored by Coke, and so that was another big push that got it to, you know, record-breaking numbers for SMITE. And the Hoyt Cinema thing as well. It's another great example of how traditional brands are helping to push esports into the mainstream.
I know there's, I mean, it's obviously a bit of a tricky thing when you start talking about traditional media, because not to go into awful industry talk, but you have a lot of commercial restrictions around broadcasting. So, obviously it's the publisher's IP, but then you have the leagues that are operating it, and they might have an exclusive broadcaster deal with one particular platform, or they might have a certain sponsor that, doesn't want the material in another place because maybe there's a conflict of interest for them there. So there is a lot of difficult areas to navigate, and then for the community, like, where does that leave them? And they're kind of between a rock and a hard place in a lot of ways, because the publishers may not allow community members to stream or broadcast their footage somewhere, or they may already have like the Hoyt's viewing party that may already be set up, so they don't want other viewing parties sort of contending with that, because that's a partnership deal right there. But I mean, that's the beauty of platforms like Twitch, right? Is that Twitch can be broadcast anywhere. So I think it's up to the community to, I guess, push the publishers and the league operators on where they want it. So, if they're not finding that there's enough ways to get together as a group and enjoy esports, and they need to start pushing back and going, well, why don't we have more live events? Why can't I play this at my bar? Like, why am I not seeing this on my cable network? Like, the community is the voice. As I said earlier, like, the fans are the bread and butter of esports. Like, you can't have a popular sport if there's no players and no one watching it. So in that sense, but as far as the actual execution of it, I agree. I think it's up to the publishers. I think it's up to the league operators to negotiate that field and find ways to get it out there. And similar to what we're doing right now, a lot of it's education on traditional media agencies. Like, this is why it's important. This is why you need to understand it. And that's kind of, I mean, the whole theme of this panel is like getting esports broadcast to a point where if you put it in front of a room of people who have no clue about games, I mean, like, they're like, Pac-Man? That's a game. Like, they've got no clue. Getting into a position where we can, like, show them a match and they can go, wow, that is epic.
Definitely.
That's so cool.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I know you've lined up, so I'll get you to wait after and you